We saw yesterday, boys and girls, how God helped his people. He helped his people by giving them water that came right out of a rock. He helped his people by protecting them from the Amalekites, giving them the power to fight back. And now we're going to see in a way how he helps Moses. Now, Moses had, we don't know when, but the Bible tells us that Moses had sent his wife, Zipporah, and his two sons. Remember, he had two sons. The name of the one, let's see, here we go. So they are in the Red Sea. Oops. They're crossing here. This was Midian, remember? Moses went fleeing many years ago. He went right over here to Midian, and that's where his wife was, Zipporah. And he and his Zipporah and Eleazar and Manasseh, not Manasseh. His first son's name was Gershom, which means I have been a stranger. And the next one, it was Eleazar, the Lord has helped me. They came with Moses back to Egypt. But sometime later, Moses had sent them back. And now Jethro, Zipporah's father, Moses' father-in-law, he hears about what God has all done. So he sends a message to Moses. I'm bringing your wife and your two sons back to you. So Jethro with Zipporah, and they are going down here, and they're coming to meet Moses when they're right around here. And when Moses hears that, he comes out to meet them. You can imagine how happy he would be to see his wife and his two sons and his father-in-law. And then they talk to each other, and they kiss each other, and they hug each other. And then Jethro and Moses, they go into the tent to eat bread, and so do the elders of the people. And Moses tells Jethro everything. He says, this is what God has done for us. He tells about how the miracles, and he tells them how terrible things were in Egypt. And then he tells them about the Red Sea and how, they were so, and there came the Pharaoh with the chariots after them, and the water swallowed them up. And when Jethro heard all those stories, he said, blessed be God. Now I know that God is the strongest. He's stronger than those Egyptians who were so arrogant. He's stronger than anything. Well, that night they had a sleep, and the next morning, Jethro, who was watching what Moses was doing, Moses sat by his tent, and all the people came to him. One person said, it's not right. This man, and the other one said, no. He took my spot first. And they would bring up a case to them. They were kind of arguing with each other, and Moses would listen to both and say, no, this is the way it should be. And then there would be somebody else would come to him, and they would say, we have a problem. We can't decide which one, who's right, he or me. And so Moses will say, well, tell me what happened. And they'll tell everything that happened. And then Moses will, this is what God's law is. God's law is that we're very honest or whatever. And he would tell all these things. He did it from early in the morning till late at night. And when Jethro saw all that, he said to Moses, what are you doing? And Moses said, well, the people, they don't know all God's laws. And so they come to me, and so I can teach them God's laws and the way to do things. And then I have to decide, is the first person right or the second person right? Oh, said Jethro, you are not being wise. If you keep that up, you will wear yourself out, and you will wear all the people out. I want to give you some advice. Advice, boys and girls, is a good idea. I'm going to give you a good idea. You should choose wise people, wise men, the elders of each tribe who fear God and want to do what's right. You should teach them God's laws. And then if you should make them in leaders over tens, over 50s, over hundreds, over thousands. So if a person has a problem, he goes to the first leader, the one that's in charge of 10. I'm going to go to, let's say here's 10 people, and we have one person that's in charge. If these two people have an argument, they go to this person. And if it's a hard one, well, then they go to the one that has, that has 50. And if they can't figure it out, then they'll go to the one that has 100. And if they can't figure it out, they'll go to the one that's in charge of 1,000. And only the very hardest cases will come to Moses. And Moses said, that's a good idea. So the Lord sent Jethro to give Moses a good idea so he wouldn't be worn out because the Lord doesn't want his people to be worn out. So Moses did that. He chose really good people, people that were honest and who feared God and who wanted to do what was right. And he put them in charge of the people. So if the people had an argument, they went to one of those leaders. And if they couldn't figure it out, then they went to one higher up. And finally, if they couldn't, they would go to Moses. And then Jethro said goodbye. He kissed Zipporah and his two grands said goodbye. And then Jethro went back to Midian. And now Zipporah is back with her husband. And tomorrow, we will do the story of what happens. They're in front of this big mountain. This mountain is sometimes called Mount Horeb and sometimes called Mount Sinai. And God is going to show his people how wonderful, how holy, and how good he is. And that's the end of that story.